time, there lived a girl, one who looked, well, like me. That's because this is my story. This is not a love story, even though it started out as one. I just got a new start in an unfamiliar kingdom when he came blazing into my life. I was running errands one afternoon, picking up supplies for the bakery I had just opened, when I saw him for the first time. The prince, atop his stormy gray steed, chocolate-colored hair shining in the sun, his tunic falling loosely over the chiseled muscles in his chest and arms, his enchanting eyes glittering like green tourmaline that seemed to burn into my soul when they first looked into mine. He was something so divine to behold. I didn't even notice that the buzz of life remained unchanged in the street. My world stopped. For that moment, there was nothing else but him and me. If love at first sight does exist, this was it. In my state of entrancement, I had dropped all that I'd been carrying. By the fairy tale rules, it was only fitting that he dismounted his horse to retrieve my groceries off the ground. I'm so clumsy. Thank you, Your Highness. I stammered. Please, mademoiselle, it's Luke here. Luke. And your name? It's Aria. Well, Aria, I'm delighted to meet you. And it seems that you could use a hand. In one swift motion, he swept me off my feet, set me on his horse, and delivered me to my shop. He sat in my shop for a few hours talking to me, observing me until the duty of his title called him away. That was our first encounter. I thought restlessly of nothing but him the rest of that day. I wanted to know more. Those alluring eyes haunted my slumber. The next morning, as was my routine, I went to work in my shop. I was in the back, making a batch of pastries and singing. Before he died, my father always told me that I had a magical voice that could bewitch anyone. He also believed that the dishes came to life at night. In the middle of my song, I heard the tinkering of the bell at the door. Still in song, with flour on my nose and my apron over my blue dress, I walked in to find my Luke with his mouth open. Monsieur, you all right? I've never been better. You sing beautifully, Aria. Come with me. I threw my powdered apron onto the floor and placed my hand in the much larger hand he extended me. He turned on a heel and led me to his horse once again, and we were off. This time in a gallop, with my arms wrapped intently around his midsection, we were headed for the palace. From down where the commoners resided, it looked like something from a grand storybook, but up close, it looked dark, dreary, and somewhat frightening. Nevertheless, it was a palace. I slid off the horse's back into Luke's arms. He was so close. I tingled from head to toe from the electricity that was generated between us. With his big hand, he swept the windblown hair from my face and wiped the flour from my nose. All breathing ceased in my chest, but my heart pounded like a stampede. Taking my hand with a devious grin spread from ear to ear, he said, I want to show you something. He took me through a labyrinth that opened up into a barren garden that must have once been splendid. A single rose grew on a bush in the center of the garden. It was the sweetest smelling, most perfect rose that I'd ever laid my eyes upon. This used to be my favorite place in the world. This man had suddenly turned into a boy, vulnerable and shy. I was head over heels for this mysterious man. Still, with his youthful demeanor, Luke requested, Would you sing for me? Yes, okay. As I began to sing as sweetly as possible, I could feel the magic this time. Roses began to grow and bloom all around us. Luke's masculinity instantly returned, his eyes looking into my very soul, pulled me against him, and with his full lips, kissed me with more passion than I'd ever felt in my entire life. True love's kiss had bound me to him, mind, body, and soul. A short month later, we exchanged vows, and I became his princess. He was everything I could have ever dreamed a husband to be in the beginning. He was attentive and patient. He took care of my every need. I fell so deeply in love with him. I sought only to please him and support him. Whatever he asked of me, it was done. He told me one day, "I wouldn't want anything to happen to you. You know all I want is for you to be here with me and happy. Will you promise you won't leave the grounds unless I'm with you?" It seemed strange that he would make such a request, but I agreed because I trusted him with my whole heart. And so I spent my days in our very big home. I explored corridors and rooms, singing, watching the house transform at the sound of my voice. This once dark and frightening hallways became warm and welcoming. It was beginning to feel like home. I didn't want to leave this place. One day, as I was roaming through the home, I discovered an immensely large library with more books than I could read in a lifetime. Once I'd found this treasure trove, I spent most of my time in there. But one day, just after I kissed my husband on his way out, I heard something on my way to the library. Someone singing. I thought perhaps it was one of the servants. It was a sad song. The melody beckoned me to pursue it. Through twists and turns and a winding staircase, the voice impelled me to come, till finally I was in a part of the castle that remained undiscovered to me before that moment. Before my wide eyes was a dungeon, dark with a chilling breeze that pricked the back of my neck. Suddenly, I became aware that I was not alone. "I was hoping you'd find me, princess." Creeping forth out of the shadows, just beyond the confines of her jail cell, was a frail old woman, her skin white like snow, eyes of gray hiding a million stories, and hair scraggly, sweeping the floor, and silvery with secrets and wisdom. "You know me?" "Oh, yes, my dear. There are many things that I know, and you know so very little." "I beg your pardon. Dearie, you know not where you are or what is happening right under your nose." "Who are you, woman? What, I pray, are you talking about?" "Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom. A wonderful, wealthy, and happy kingdom. No foe was too great. No friend was too small. The king, the most caring ruler, dignified and just, ruled the land with mercy and strength. And the queen, reigning gracefully by his side. They were so loved by their people. And they had a son, a prince. He was the most majestic sight for anyone to see. He fell in love and got married. The young lady was much like yourself. She had a voice just as sweet as yours. The angels envied her music because it was the most powerful magic in the kingdom. With just one song, she created the most ravishing rose garden, which became her haven. When the prince sought her, he knew he'd find her singing in the garden. The more she sang, the more enchanted the garden became, and the whole castle, too. The prince, he discovered a way to take that power. He clipped the roses from their bushes and turned them into oils he bathed in and cakes that he ate. He consumed and absorbed their magic, and he became greedy for more, and more. He couldn't get enough. So he confined her to the castle, told her it wasn't safe without him, to stay there. And she did, for she loved him so. But he wanted her to give him more power. It was no gesture of love. From the same selfishness, he had his parents, the king and queen, killed. Poisoned them with roses that he himself, with his power, had generated. All the people mourned their death alongside the prince. No one knew. No one but the princess. She saw him, taking her flowers, Followed him into his room, she did, and witnessed him taking the magic out of them. She saw with her own eyes. With curiosity and a broken heart, she left the castle in the middle of the night. In the kingdom, she discovered that things were not as they were when she had left. The people were starved and dying. Their world was filled with darkness and hate for things that they knew not who to blame for the pain and poverty. Oh, but the little princess knew that before she could do anything, the prince came riding in, furious at her escape. Without even getting off his horse, he yanked her on, took her to the castle, and locked her away. And that's where I stopped.
That was not typical.